Thank you very much for inviting me, Alan. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in the UK and what's working and what we're having to work hard on to try and get it to work. So Digital Built Britain runs out of a programme that's running government in the UK for the last 5 to 10 years, and it came to Cambridge in 2017. We were really lucky that we managed to keep a lot of people on the former programme and bring them into the Cambridge programme. So we're not starting from scratch, we're building on the work of some people who are much cleverer than me and have been in this business for a very long time. So we talk a lot about what is a digital built Britain, and I'm very conscious I'm here in Ireland. It could be a digital built Ireland or a digital built anywhere. It doesn't have to be specific to Britain. So we talk about the phases that you might go through when you're creating an asset or a building. So we talk about the design phase, making sure that right at the beginning, before you even pick up your mouse or your pen, you think about what data requirements do you need, what do people need to know, not just while they're building the thing, but also while they're occupying, using, maintaining, and at the end, recycling, hopefully, the thing that they're building. We then talk about what data do you need when you're actually building it? How do you share that data? Securely, resiliently, how do you make sure that the right people have the right data? Not that you're opening all your data to everybody, but that it's specific to the needs and wants of the groups, and making sure that you've got that collaborative way of sharing, the collaborative way of working. In the UK, we're particularly bad at the gap between building the thing and operating the thing. How do you make sure that as we finish the build, we don't just hand over a big pile of either physical notes or digital notes and the keys and say, there you go, off you go, run your thing. How do you make sure that that data is incorporated into the running of your asset? How do you make sure that as we run the asset, we learn from running that asset? We learn from what works, what doesn't, and we tweak it as we go along. And then once you've got your single asset, how do you integrate that into the environment in which it sits, into the other assets, the other buildings, the other road systems, hospitals in which that asset sits? And most importantly of all, how do you use the data that you've collected through the lifetime of that asset to make sure when you're building a new one, you build it better, you build it quicker, you build it greener. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're calling the National Digital Twin Programme. So at the end of 2017, our National Infrastructure Commission published this Data for the Public Good report. It's online if any of you would like a little light bedtime reading. It laid out the challenges that they felt we had in sharing data for the public good, but it also laid out recommendations. What should we do to make that better? It came up with 3 key recommendations. Create a national digital twin, enabling digital twins to come together, to plan, to predict, to understand our built environment. To create a digital framework for the secure and resilient information management of data, of information. And we need to make sure that that data is interoperable. It's no good having silos of data in various places. You need to be able to share appropriately. And it tasked CDBB with setting up a digital framework task group, which we're now calling the National Digital Twin Programme. So you'll see both sets of languages used in the comms. And that's about providing coordination of the key players. And coordination is really important. It is not about control. It's not about us standing here saying, you must do this. It's about getting all those people in the room that need to be thinking about our data, how we share it, and how it affects our construction and our operation of our buildings. So the benefits of this national digital twin are about, bluntly, providing better outcomes for public, for the society, per whole life pound. We need to make sure that we're not just looking at the capital cost, we're looking at the whole life cost of an asset. It's got clear benefits to society. We can improve stakeholder engagement, but that will mean a better experience for people who are actually using those things. It might mean that your buses are linked in with your hospital appointments. It will mean that our buildings should produce less carbon emissions. And I was looking at the protesters yesterday. It's something that we all need to be thinking about. It should mean that people are more satisfied with their buildings, to have more input in how they use their buildings and their infrastructure. There are clear benefits to the economy. If we can use our things smarter, if we can use them more efficiently, there are financial benefits to firms and to the country as a whole. It should create new markets for business, new services, new business models, and new firms will come on board and are coming on board around this data sharing. And as I've already said, there must be benefits from the environment. We have to make sure that we're all doing our part to avert a climate crisis. So what is the National Digital Twin? How do we see it? So we all know that we have transport networks, and they link together to a certain extent. We have energy networks. We need to make sure that these are working together. They need to link in with transport. What about our water networks? What about our telecoms networks? We all produce a lot of waste. How do we link these into our model? Social infrastructure, so hospitals, schools, we need to bring these together. And of course, we all live and work in places. What about our residential buildings? What about our commercial buildings, our industrial buildings? And all this has to interface with the natural environment. If we can get all these interfacing together, sharing data appropriately, we can have a national digital twin that looks at all of this. So what is a digital twin? And I know you'll be hearing from others today about their definition. For us, simply it's about a digital model of a physical thing where we take data from the physical asset, put it into our model, and then we have interventions going back. So to give you an example of what we're talking about, let's look at the rail network. I have a train, it's producing data as it runs along the tracks. I take that data to digital twin to make sure I can manage that train, its maintenance, its operation better. With that model, I then put interventions back into the physical twin, so I might know that the bogie is showing signs of wear and I need to pull it in for maintenance. It's about creating those insights and decisions from your physical asset using the data. But it's not enough just to look at the train itself. The train runs on tracks. The train uses signals. They have their own digital twins. Let's connect these up so we can look at the rail network. Then why don't we look at the transport system as a whole? Rail doesn't run on its own. It runs in conjunction with the road network. It runs in conjunction with our airports, our planes. We each connect these digital twins together, we'll get a much better outcome. We'll have a more holistic transport system. But again, it's not just about transport. These interface with the energy networks. They interface with water networks. If we can create an ecosystem of connected digital twins, we'll start getting real value from the data that each of our assets is connecting. And when you have a network of connectable digital twins, you will start seeing some real benefits, not just financially, but to society and to the environment. So how do we approach this data sharing? Well, we could have a top-down authoritarian approach where somebody stands up and says, this is the way we're going to do it. And we're calling this the authoritarian approach. Generally, that doesn't go down very well with people. We don't like being told what to do in that sense. We could have a Darwinian bottom-up approach where we talk about, let's see what the market says. Let's, very much like the World Wide Web, let's go out there and the best will win. But actually the best isn't necessarily the best for the public good. It might be best for the biggest corporation who has the most money to throw into it. We think the approach is somewhere in the middle, that it's about having some guidelines, some framework, building on what we already have, and moving forward from that. So the emerging approach we have about this data sharing is two things which we call the Commons and the Digital Twin Hub. And I'll talk a little more about the DT Hub later. But the Commons is this national resource held in common across the UK, and it could be far wider than the UK, that unlocks this effective information management across the industry. It's about the minimum necessary open standards and methodologies. And we've pulled together what we're calling a Ministry of All the Talents, a group of experts to advise us and the nation as to what would this look like. But we need a place to test that, and that's what we're calling the Digital Twin Hub. And this is a collaborative web-enabled team, community team, that's actually trying these things out. It's looking at what the Commons might produce and saying, well, does it work? Does it really work in real life? Posing questions back to the Commons saying, well, actually, you need to be thinking about this, or have you thought about that? It's a group of people who are actually doing real hands-on development of digital twins. So what is the purpose of the National Digital Twin Programme? It's about the steering and the guidance of this development of adoption of an information management framework. For us, it's specifically with the built environment in mind. But if we do this right, it should work across finance, it should work across services. It's a generic framework. It needs to provide those necessary building blocks to enable this effective information management sharing. And that data sharing, it has to be secure and it has to be resilient. And it will provide the basis for this national digital twin. It will support this connected ecosystem. So if you like, it's the web that connects all the digital twins together. We feel there are two key inputs to the information management framework. There's the Gemini principles, which was published at the end of last year, which is this guiding value, the conscience of the framework, things that we hold to be true no matter what the framework should be doing. And we need to have a prioritised plan, which we're calling the roadmap. How actually do we get from where we are now to an information management framework that works? So the vision for the framework is this effective information management. We believe that when we have it in place, it will enable better decisions, it will lead to these financial savings, improved performance, better outcomes for business, and most importantly, for society. We need to make sure it's in place so that we can have this foundation for the National Digital Twin. And the way I like to summarise the framework is about having the right information that is correct, that is right, to the right people at the right time. And we're talking, for us, we're talking right time, not necessarily real time. So for example, if you're looking at planning, you don't need microsecond updates of your data. It's a much slower process. I mentioned the Gemini principles. It was a very collaborative document that we put together on the Gemini principles. It took several months and hundreds of people inputting into what we felt was these founding definitions and this guiding value for this information management framework. We have summarised it with our 9 boxes. So we feel that every part of the National Digital Twin and the framework must have a clear purpose. And the fundamental purpose is for the public good. That's at the heart of everything we do in this programme. It's got to create value and it's got to provide insights. It's no point having a whole bank of data that isn't providing us with things that will help us do our jobs better. People have to be able to trust the framework. They have to be able to trust the data. They have to be able to trust the National Digital Twin. There are some tensions there. So we know it needs to be secure, but we also know it needs to be open. We know it needs to be high quality data, but again, it needs to be open. So there is a big batch of work going on about how do we marry those potential conflicts and make sure that we have it as secure as possible and as open as possible. It must be able to function. It must have a function that we can define. Our view is that it is a federated model, so the National Digital Twin is not a monolithic, huge twin of everything owned by a big brother who sits up there. It's about federating the digital twins that a lot of us are already starting to create. We must be able to curate that digital twin, that set of data. So life changes. I'm sure all of you know that often your bits of paper with this is what I'm going to build, or in modern parlance, your Revit model perhaps, that as built is not quite the same as what we thought we were going to build. So we need to make sure that's updated. And as you're running your asset, as you're using your asset, we need to be constantly curating our data to make sure that it's correct. And we also know that what we know now, we're going to know more and different things 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in the future. We will have new technologies that possibly we haven't even imagined yet. We have to have a framework that is broad enough to be able to evolve as society and as technology evolves. So the National Digital Twin is this ecosystem of connected digital twins, connected by this secure and resilient data sharing. I want to talk a little about the roadmap, our prioritised plan for delivering the framework. We've talked about, within the group, splitting it into 5, and now 6 actually, areas. So there's an approach. How do we approach data sharing? What's the fundamental premise of how we're going to do this? We need to make sure it's governed really well. That just doesn't mean us and our journey towards it, but when the framework exists, how do we make sure that it's governed, that appropriate people have appropriate authority over appropriate parts of it? The commons is, as I was saying, this what we hold in common. It's the bit where we wouldn't expect there to be any commercial competition. It should be the bit that everybody looks at and says, that makes perfect sense, we all need to do this. Around the edge of it, absolutely there are places for competition and commercial businesses to thrive. But we hold this bit in common, this is what we all believe to be true. We're aware that we've called it enablers, but there are blockers out there. There are things that could stop us being able to do this, being able to have an information management framework, so we need to look at what those are. And actually, possibly most importantly, we need to look at sectoral change. We need to help people, businesses, government understand the changes that they need to make and support them in that journey. So this is one of those slides that, please don't try and read it, I'm very happy to share the slides later. This is how we're looking at what we need to do over the next 4 years. The yellow line in the middle is what we hope to have done by the end of this financial year, and it lays out the blocks that we should be doing and when, how it all fits together. And there are two little boxes sitting in the middle of the green, which are 3.4 and 3.5, for those of you who want the numbers, about information architecture. And that's where the heart of the technical work sits. But that doesn't mean it's the most important. It means it's probably the biggest in terms of time and money. But we need to make sure that we remove the blockers and that we produce the support that industry needs to adopt these things. Part of the support is the Digital Twin Hub. I've mentioned it earlier. It's a collaborative web-enabled community, and I say it's web-enabled. It's also about getting people in a room and talking, because it's only so much that you can do through a web-based portal. And it's about those who are making serious progress in digital twins. This can be asset owners, it can be cities, it can be universities. We've got 6 groups at the minute who are involved in our initial startup. We're hoping that they will get together and they will be sharing their knowledge, their experience, their issues, their problems, and their successes. It's a little bit like a homework sharing club is how I've been describing it. It's, as I say, starting small with 6 companies. So we have Sellafield, we have Heathrow Airport, we have Anglian Water, we have GLA. So a group of firms and entities working with digital twins in different areas. They've been very open with us about what they will share, and they're very keen to share their experiences. It's about producing those builders within the leaders within the built environment who will build consensus, who will iterate on the Gemini principles, because it's an open and evolving document. We know we're unlikely to have got it perfectly right first time. It's about being able to use those digital twins to test out the information management framework. Does it work? What do we need to change? And about developing Gemini-compliant digital twins. So the objectives of the Digital Twin Hub, it's partly, as I say, about learning and sharing experience. It's about innovation, and we find when you get people together, they tend to innovate better, they spark ideas off each other. It's about capturing good practice so that we can support industries coming into this field with their digital twins. It's of course about enabling the national digital twin, but it's about making sure that we promote adoption of the Gemini principles and the information management framework. It's about finding pilots. Where can we find pilots that can help us address some of the gaps in our knowledge? And it's also about providing a support network and a register, if you like, of where the good work is happening. So why did we create a hub? Why did we just not have digital twins in various places doing their own thing? We very much felt that having this digital twin hub community allowed us to verify and to validate the work that's been done so far in CDVB and also inform others about what's happening. We feel very much that this learning by doing and the overcoming by sharing will lead to success together. As I said, we've started with 6 because we felt it was much better to start fairly small and expand in a hopefully controlled fashion. We're very much looking forward to having other firms, other groups involved soon. So what sort of challenges do we think the Digital Twin Hub is going to have? Well, first question, what is a twin? There's a lot of discussion about what is a twin, what is not a twin. How do we make data accessible to the twin? And I've written all data here, but how do you make sure that the correct data, the appropriate data is made accessible to the twin? How do we manage our legacy assets? in some ways, having a twin of something that you're about to build now is, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier than a building that's been around for 800 years. How do we integrate the assets that we consume, that we go through, that we use, rather than actually own? What solutions should we use? What skills do we need? We know there's a lot of work to be done on helping the industry, helping individual people upskill. And how do we get executive buy-in? I can stand here talking, but if the boards of companies are not interested, this isn't going to happen. We talk about the value that we feel you can get from a digital twin. So as digital twins mature, at the beginning it helps you in your planning accuracy when you're in the design and build phase. You'll start to get efficiency gains and risk reduction. Once those come in place, you'll start to understand better your asset and how it's working. This should lead to increased productivity and optimization of the use of your asset, which in turn will allow you to make sure your asset is far more resilient to financial crisis, to physical crises. And you should have a twin that is adaptable to those things that change in life, in business, in the world. All those will add more and more value, and we hope to get to a stage where people will be looking at the digital twin as, why would I not do this? It makes such business sense. I may have to pay a little bit more at the beginning, but actually it's making such business sense, I must have one. So what are we asking people to do now? Now we're looking at industry, IT, consultants, cities, government, academics, all together. We've got 64 people signed up with the Digital Twin Hub as it is. We're always welcome to more, both from the UK and internationally. To register on the CDBB website to join the existing DT Hub team, it will be a phased approach, so we're looking, as I said, to start small and then expand in a controlled fashion. And we're due to release the online DT Hub platform in the next few months with this continued growth of the overall membership. We've created a Digital Twin Hub steering group, which is chaired by Sam Cholton, formerly of Daphne, the data analytics for the National Infrastructure Centre. And they are working to create a roadmap based on the chart I showed before about the involvement of digital twins and identifying the resulting business values, because we know we have to be able to put this down to, why should a business do this? We're having a survey of how are digital twins currently being used across the sectors, not just in the built environment sector, but across sectors. We want to create a complexity matrix outlining the uses and the complexities related to the creation of digital twins, so that we can look and see where the benefits are and how that will work. We'll be producing a report outlining the strategic approach to incorporation of digital twins within industry and within government. And we're incredibly lucky that the UK government is very much bought into this, so we have a very open conversation with them. We need to collect best practice so that we can escalate the common strand, this technical piece that we all hold in common with the information management framework. And we at CDBB are really keen to support practitioners and company executives as they look to adopt and evolve their digital twins. We're very aware that there are some absolute experts in digital twins out there. They don't all sit on company boards, so we need to be able to provide the support for those board members to understand, technically to a certain extent, but from a business perspective, why they should be working here. We want to have a lot of guidance and consultation for and with the members of the Digital Twin Hub, so that we can accelerate and facilitate the National Digital Twin Challenge. I hope that's given you a very quick summary of what we're doing at CDBB. I'd be really happy to answer questions in the question session, or afterwards, please come and catch me. Thank you very much.